Hi, my name is Jim Robertson. I'm chairman of the Cypress Creek Greenway project, which is a committee actually within the Cypress Creek Flood Control Coalition. The coalition works within the Cypress Creek watershed. We work on flood mitigation, we work on preservation, which includes park and trail development, as well as communication and education, and we're basically a voice for the community. Relative to the Cypress Creek Greenway project, I grew up in rural Ohio. I grew up on a farm there, and as I was growing up, one of the things that I enjoyed most about my childhood was the time that I spent out in the wooded areas along a creek that was near the farm that I grew up on. And have very, very fond memories of many, many hours out there growing up. When we moved to this area of Harris County, and that's actually almost 30 years ago now, as I got outside and had time, I realized that we have a wonderful creek in our backyard. Not literally, but very close to where I grew up. It's a wonderful wooded corridor along Cypress Creek. And as I explored that area, brought back lots of fond memories and certainly enjoyed getting out. I didn't do the things that I did as a youth there, but I did enjoy it. But one of the things that I realized was I was seeing more and more areas along the creek being clear-cut, being developed for a variety of things, for homes, for businesses, and things like that in that Cypress Creek corridor. So I got interested in the idea of trying to preserve that corridor. Can we actually preserve the creek, the corridor that's along the creek? There are lots of trails at that time, just natural trails along the creek. There were a few parks along the creek, but became aware that we have an opportunity in our area to preserve something that's really very special. If we can preserve that Cypress Creek corridor, preserve the parks that are there, connect those parks with the trails, and then also develop new parks along the trails as well. So the idea is to have a linear corridor along Cypress Creek with multi-use, all-purpose trails connecting the numerous parks that do exist and that are developing along Cypress Creek. The Cypress Creek Greenway project is actually a committee, as I previously mentioned, but we don't buy land, we don't build parks, we don't build trails ourselves, but we are a coordinating, advocacy, visioning entity. And the vision, which we're working on and is developing, is for the Cypress Creek Greenway to start out near the Waller County line in westernmost Harris County, and it will follow Cypress Creek all the way across to where Cypress Creek joins Spring Creek. Precinct 4 has worked for years with Precinct 3 in Montgomery County to develop the Spring Creek Greenway, which actually goes all the way up to 45 now. This is a coordinated effort between the two precincts. This actually started out as more of a grassroots effort and developed many partnerships along the way, and I'll be talking about those partnerships. But there are many existing parks along Cypress Creek, but what we have done is work with entities. We work with the utility districts, we work with developers, we work with Precincts 3 and Precincts 4 to add additional parks. Since this effort started in 2004, approximately 30 new parks have developed along Cypress Creek that will eventually be part of the Cypress Creek Greenway. We weren't the catalyst for all of those, but we did work with many of them in their initial stages. But again, the idea is to have the Greenway, this preserved corridor all along Cypress Creek. The eventual trail will connect all the existing parks and new parks that are developing. The partnerships I mentioned, we work with utility districts. There are actually about 70 utility districts that border Cypress Creek. There are probably about a half a dozen developments. And then two precincts, Precinct 3 and Precinct 4. We've worked some with Precinct 3, and we worked extensively with Precinct 4 because so much of the Greenway is in Precinct 4, this heavily developed corridor along Precinct 4. But Precinct 4 has been a partner in many ways. They do trail development, they are building parks. The Kickerillo Mission Preserve is one that was developed by Precinct 4. and they're continuing to work on new parks and connectivity. Precinct 4 works closely with Harris County Flood Control. Through the years, numerous tracts along the Cypress Creek corridor have been purchased for floodplain preservation. These are tracts that could have been developed, shouldn't have been developed in many cases, but again, it's preserving that wooded corridor that sits within the floodplain and is actually protecting areas that would normally be flooded, and if they were developed, even under the regulations, some of those could have been developed, but are subject to flooding if they are developed. But the partnership with Precinct 4 has worked in many different aspects. As I mentioned, working with them and coordinating with them in flood control, we identify tracts that might be suitable for acquisition. Precinct 4 is building parks, it's building trails, and then also Precinct 4 in the existing and newly developed parks has an extensive program of outreach and education. Previously, if one wanted to participate in these events, you had to go over to Jesse Jones Park, which is almost over 20 miles from here, to participate in programs like that. But now with the Kickerillo Mission Preserve here and the staff that is stationed here at the park, there's a tremendous amount of outreach and programming that is developing here at Cypress Creek, or on Cypress Creek here at the Kickerillo Mission Preserve. We are working to get the connectivity along the creek, but then we're also working to get the connectivity away from the creek so that the communities in the immediate area will have access to the corridor. In this immediate area, the Lone Star College is just across State Highway 249. The HP campus is over there, the Vintage development, all around here in this area. And so we have kind of a nucleus right here on Cypress Creek at State Highway 249, right on Cypress Creek where the Kickerillo Mission Preserve is. The 100-acre wood is just a little bit further to the east. Cypress Park's a little bit further, or to the west, I'm sorry. Then Cypress Park is further to west. So we have several anchor parks right along the creek in this area. Thanks for joining us today to learn more about the Cypress Creek Greenway. We've got wonderful parks, wonderful trails. The partnerships with Precinct 4 and others are critical to the success and development of this. Look forward to seeing you out on the trails. Thank you very much.